Reggie. Hey. Hey. Meow. Over here. Meow. What? Meow. What? No. Over here. Over here. You freaking. Oh, you freaking. Come here. You silly. Ugh. You silly cat. So I'm trying to make it more of a habit of talking about anime that I watch. Thing is that I just don't end up watching a lot of anime these days for various reasons. But fortunately, I'm fixing that, and I did watch two of them very recently. Two sequels that I don't even think I was all that. I wouldn't say I wasn't that interested in watching them, but I guess I didn't expect too much from them, and especially the first one. So I watched the third season of Doctor Stone. And Doctor Stone is a series that has always just kind of existed to me. Like, it's always been there, and it's always been fine. I've always enjoyed it. There's nothing really wrong with it, aside from the fact that the art can kind of look like total shit. Um, and I don't know, the plot itself would be kind of stupid and really basic. Like, I don't even remember how the conflict of season 2 finished up. Like, I have no idea how Senku actually beat Tsukasa or got him to stop being a dick or whatever. But I just remember both of them having this clash of ideals that was really dumb and just silly and ridiculous, and it was just like impossible to take seriously. Um, so I don't know. Like, the actual basic story of Doctor Stone isn't that interesting, but what I like about it is that it's constantly doing stuff. There's constantly stuff going on. What Senku will be doing is that he'll have to come up with a new invention that, you know, that theoretically should be impossible, because this is now a prehistoric civilization, I suppose. Technically, even it's about some kind of apocalyptic event that happened. A green light flashed over the entire Earth, and then every human on the planet was turned to stone. And so 3,700 years later, Senku, the main character, breaks out of that, and now he swears to rebuild civilization and find out what happened with all the petrification and stuff like that. So that's fine. And then there are some small colonies that exist because they've technically always existed. Like, they weren't affected by the petrification for whatever reason, so they've just kind of lived on forever. It's kind of interesting. And so Senku will say, like, okay, so in order to accomplish our goals, we need to build this thing. Like, I remember, the one thing I remember from season 2 is that they had to build a phone. Or maybe that was actually season 1. I don't know. But I remember Senku was like, alright, we're gonna build a telephone. And that's like, how the hell is that even possible? Because you're literally back in the Stone Age technology wise, so this should be impossible, right? But then he'll break it down and say, no, actually, it is possible. We just need to invent all of these smaller things, and we also need to require the materials needed to do this, and we need to have these specific people who can do these things. So it's kind of like this really long flow chart that is being filled out, or a giant to-do list that is being filled out in order to accomplish these larger goals. So that's the intrigue of Dr. Stone to me, and I enjoy watching that. It's something that I don't really take too seriously, but it's just kind of there, and I can watch it, and I'll be like, yeah, that was a fine anime. I've given both seasons a 7 out of 10, so that's why I ended up watching this third season, because I just wanted to watch something without being all that invested into it. I didn't really want to engage that much with something. I wouldn't say turn your brain off. I don't think that's like a real thing, but I guess maybe some people could take it that way. I just wanted to watch something simple that I would not hate or have any strong feelings about whatsoever. And so I did that. And then suddenly I found myself watching like 6 episodes in one sitting, and I'm like, wait a minute, has Dr. Stone always been this good? Because seriously, the third season, I think, really stepped up in plot writing, most importantly. Like, it's still doing what it's always done. It's still accomplishing these large tasks by filling out these smaller tasks first. But about halfway into the third season, they kind of get this weird radio signal from the distance, and that has some really big implications on the entire plot, including the whole petrification sort of thing. So it really ramps up an actual conflict in this series that I don't think we've had before. Like, again, I know they fought Tsukasa and stuff like that, but that stuff was dumb. So Senku, his next goal becomes to he has to build a giant ship. At first they just build a boat in general, but then they were like, all right, we need to get across continents. We need to fucking sail. So that's what they do in this season, and then they go and find this other far off island that has another very mysterious sort of colony on it that also that happens to have some kind of petrification powers somehow, which is really interesting. And yeah, just the way this colony acts and the way just the fact that it exists and how it differs from what you know about the series already. I thought it was really, really interesting. Like, I thought this was a really interesting conflict. It doesn't resolve, unfortunately, because it's a split course, so we are going to get the second half of this in the fall. So, not too much really happened so far, but it still was really interesting, seeing these new people, the petrification power, all these new characters, and just the way that this little society works. And yeah, I was just personally really engrossed in it. I suddenly found myself really excited to watch Dr. Stone for the first time in my entire life. So I guess I owe a small apology to this series, because I remember in our first impressions on Tokyo Podfathers, we were like kind of shitting on it. Like, I added it to the list because I was watching it, and I'm like, yeah, it's more Dr. Stone. That's pretty good. But then everyone else on the call was like, yeah, Dr. Stone fucking sucks. It's like the ugliest show ever. Who the hell cares? No one's going to bat for Dr. Stone, LMOA. And I'm like, it's fine. And I think even a couple of comments were just like, you guys were kind of harsh on Dr. Stone. And I'm just like, I just didn't have an opportunity to speak. Everyone talked over me. But now I'm like, you know what? Yeah, those guys were wrong. Dr. Stone is actually good now. This is a good series, and I'm really looking forward to watching more. It's kind of like reincarnated as a slime for me, where I go into it thinking that I'm not going to care about it, and then suddenly I watch like 8 episodes all at once, and I'm like, wait, that was really fun. And yeah, that's about it. That's all I really have to say about Dr. Stone. It's just a very fine series, so if that's something you've been, I don't know, hesitant to continue or pick up, I think it's good. I think it's worth watching. And then the other thing that I watched, which I think might have more expectations attached to it, was Vinland Saga. I watched the second season of Vinland Saga, and funny enough, I don't think I have too much to say about this right now, at least not like off the cuff like this, because in a way, I don't feel myself attached to Vinland Saga all that much. This is a good series, but I'm also not like, excuse me, I had like a burp. Oh, that was fucking disgusting. Jesus. But I'm not necessarily stoked to watch more of it, if that makes sense. I mean, I also don't want that to be a negative thing, mind you. It's just that Vinland Saga is seen as like this classic manga, this masterpiece level series, and I watch it and I think it's good. I actually think it's quite good, but I'm also not. I guess my issue is that I'm just not that invested in the main characters. But I also feel like that's like kind of the point of Vinland Saga. It's a very unique series where the main character of it isn't particularly consequential to the plot, at least a lot of the time. He definitely does have his moments, especially in this season. But it's more about the things that just happen around them. Vinland Saga is about the world. It's like I think 10th to 11th century, wherever the fuck. It's about Vikings, so that northern European era mostly. And yeah, and it starts with this kid named Thorfinn, who is the son of a great Viking warrior named Thors. He's like this legendary hero or something, but then he gets dishonorably killed by a man named Askeladd, and so Thorfinn swears to exact vengeance on him. He joins Asheladd's crew, and just kind of stays there for his entire life, hoping that someday he'll get strong enough to defeat Ashalad and finally have his revenge. That's at least what the first season is about, mostly. Without saying how that ends, that's kind of over now. And so second season has a somewhat considerable time jump, where now, suddenly, Thorfinn is on a farm working as a slave. Just kind of chopping down trees. That's all he really does in his days. And he's just kind of lost all will to live, but he just kind of walks around doing that anyway. And then there's this other guy named Einar who meets him, and he kind of takes over as like the second main character, and then and a lot of this season is more about him, I think. And that was a really, really interesting way to start the season, and it's interesting. It's Vinland Saga with much less action this time around. Like, the first season of it really was like this Viking adventure story. This second season is mostly just kind of taking place on this farm, and it's more of a dark drama, which, again, Vinland Saga was kind of always about that, but again, it was more of an action adventure. This one, I don't even think you definitely can't call it an adventure. I don't even know if you can call it action. I mean, it has its moments. It does still have fights every now and then, but a lot of this season is just what goes on this farm, especially with Thorfinn and Einar. And you learn about, like, what's happened with Thorfinn over the last few years, like, how did he get into this spot, as opposed to where he was in the first season, and also, like, how the events of the first season have just, like, completely ruined his life and like, traumatized him. And so there's lots of, like, mystery and intrigue about that as Einar tries to figure it out. And Einar is also, you know, someone who has another tragic story. Vinland Saga is extremely tragic. Like everything bad that could happen to a person happens to the characters in Vinland Saga. Einar is a guy who is just an everyday normal guy working on a farm with his mother and his sister, and things are good. But then one day, Vikings come and raid it, they burn it down, but they survive. They get through it, they rebuild the farm, things are good once again, and then Vikings show up and burn it down again, and also kill his family, and also take him into slavery. So that's how he ends up on the farm. So, yeah, just lots of, again, 10th to 11th century Vikings. Fucked up stuff. Lots of uncalled for murders, lots of raping and pillaging, lots of women being treated like absolute shit, lots of people being treated like absolute shit, if we're being honest. Lots of characters who just give absolutely no fucks and live to fight and ruin other people's lives, because that's more or less the currency in this world. Honor and nobility and valor and victory, things that you've accomplished. I think they even say in the second season, like, when you defeat someone, you take their stuff, and like that's your winnings. And the more you acquire, the more respect you earn from other people. So, yeah, just absolutely wonderful stuff. But so, like I said, yeah, this second season is more of a drama about these two characters on this farm, and a bunch of other characters as well. There's lots of, it's kind of interesting knowing the slave master, I guess, the master of the land, whose name, Ketel. I almost forgot his name. Ketel. It's hard to actually understand how these names are pronounced, and I've gotten shit for this for some reason. Like, how I've gotten shit for how I pronounce the names in the show, for how I pronounce Thorfinn and Ashalad. That is how they're said in the fucking show, so don't get mad at me. So I think they say Ketil or something. And he's kind of interesting because, despite what I was saying about all this fucked up stuff happening, Ketil is kind of like the opposite of that, where he is a surprisingly good-hearted and honest person who talks to Thorfinn and Einar in a really friendly way, and is saying, like, yeah, if you do this for me, then I'll let you go. You can be free men once again. So there actually is this sort of hope that um, that these guys will get out of their situation, but also but because of what you know about the people in this era, you also can't trust that. You're just like, okay, there's something wrong with this guy. Like, there's definitely something going on here, right? And the thing is, the most shocking answer is not necessarily. Really, no. Ketel really is this very kind and honest man who is just kind of, he's just kind of running this farm and doing what he can, but actually treating his people with respect. And then when he runs into actual conflict, like when two kids are caught sneaking into his farm, all his henchmen and shit are around him, and they're like, yeah, you know what, we gotta beat the shit out of these kids. Fuck these kids, bro. We gotta teach these kids how to what happens when you steal from us. And he in his mind is just like, oh my god, no, why do I have to do this? But the way this guy develops over the course of the season is really, really interesting. He eventually he does reach a breaking point that was just fucking hard to watch. There's some really hard to watch stuff in this season, and I say that as someone who usually finds violence really funny and just comically absurd. Although in a way, that is also kind of a theme for Vinland Saga, in a surprisingly literal way, because the way Thorfinn develops in this season is he has now decided that violence is just simply wrong and it should not happen. And what these people do, what everybody does, what they think they have to do, it's wrong. And so he's like, you know what? I'm not going to participate in this, and no one else should as well. So I am going to go the entire rest of my life without violence. I am not going to fight anybody. I'm definitely not going to kill anybody ever again for the rest of my life, because killing people is terrifying and horrifying and horrible, and all these people are now haunting me. I'm having nightmares of the people that I've killed and the visions that I see of them. So that's kind of how this season reaches its climax, where Thorfinn then gets whatever is happening in the story, it doesn't really have anything to do with Thorfinn, but he gets himself involved with it because he does at least know the people responsible for what's going on, for the things that are happening around him. So he's like, all right, you know what? I'm going to go talk to these people and tell them that it's wrong what they're doing. And the way he, and it's so simple, and something that is really criticized with other series like Naruto. Like, I grew up with Naruto, okay? So I know that people really hate the talk no jutsu. But that's kind of where Vinland Saga ends up going. And it is actually really compelling, honestly. I think it is maybe a lot more fascinating than just dudes fighting and hitting swords at each other. Not that isn't interesting, because Vinland Saga, when it does have fights, it's really cool. The fight choreography this season was really awesome. And when two characters fight, there's usually a really, really good reason for why they're fighting. But yeah, the way Thorfinn gets involved, and it's like, all right, did you really do everything that you could? Did you seriously do everything that you possibly could before resorting to trying to kill everybody? Because that's just ridiculous to me, and I don't believe you if you say that this was the way it was supposed to happen. Because that's the thing. Like, this is a time period where people really just thought, all right, you know what, we can't solve this conflict, let's just kill each other. Thorfinn is like, no, I don't believe that's where this needed to go. I think that's ridiculous. I think there absolutely was a different way this could be resolved. And so that's what he works to do. That's what he aims to do. He aims to resolve conflicts and bring peace to the world without fighting. Because, again, these other people, I guess I'll spoil something that happens, like, in this season, and it's kind of a consequence of season 1, where in season 1 there's this kid being dragged around named Knute, who's supposed to be like the heir apparent to the throne of Denmark, I think, or maybe it was a different country, but whatever. And so he kind of like doesn't want to do anything, but then stuff happens around him, and then that really like gives him a kick in the ass, and then he decides to do stuff. So now you see him in season 2, where he is now evil god dictator emperor man who's manipulating other countries. He like secretly, I don't want to say overthrows, but he like secretly, I guess, poisons and kills the king of an allied country, and so then he can gain control over that country as well. And so his goal really is to bring peace and prosperity to the lands that he controls. But the way he's doing that is he's just marching soldiers in and taking over shit and killing people. Even though he doesn't necessarily want to, but again, he's just like, this is just the way things are done around here. This is just, I feel like I have to do this. And then Thorfinn, knowing who Knute is, he goes and talks to him. He's like, that's cap. You did not do everything that you could do. You just wanted to throw your weight around. So it was really interesting, and I think the way Thorfinn is placed in the narrative of this series is really, really well written. It's a well written series overall. I don't get too attached to the characters usually, but there are some that I like. Ashalad was just fantastic in season 1, but evidently he's not really around much for season 2. And this season didn't quite have an Ashalad, but it did have some characters that really grew on me over time. Like the closest one was Torgil in this season, who's the first son of Ketel, who at first you see him and you're just like, all right, this guy is like kind of cool, I guess. But then as time goes on, you see him do more and more stuff. You're like, holy shit, this guy's fucking awesome. So I really like this guy. There was also, what was that guy, Snake, on the farm. He was a super cool dude as well. And yeah, that's about it. That's about all I have to say about Vinland Saga. It's not a series that I'm like super in love with, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I watched basically all of it in one day. I watched like 16 episodes of this season in one sitting, and then watched the last 8 or so sometime later. So that was pretty fun. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Very, very heavy, very exciting though. It's really intense, and this had a very similar rhythm to season 1 of Vinland Saga for me, where the first half of it I was thinking like, it's all right. Like it's dark, it's gritty, it's kind of cool sometimes. There's some interesting stuff going on, but it's just all right. And then in the second half, it's like, holy shit, so much stuff is happening. I don't know, I can't look away from it now. That is basically what happened with this season as well, where the first half of it, I'm like, yeah, it's all right, kind of interesting. And then the second half, it's like, oh my god, what the fuck, man? Shit is going down, and I'm here for it. I think the other thing that maybe turns me off from this series is that it doesn't look very good, in my opinion. Although, it's not necessarily jank, it's just, I don't know how to put it. I don't know how to put it. Maybe I shouldn't say anything, because this is a really divisive thing. Everyone loves disagreeing on how Vinland Saga works, especially on how Vinland Saga looks, especially in season 1. I remember people getting like really mad about the adaptation of that. I don't know if people really care all that much for this season. I mean, it doesn't look like a terrible show or anything, but I did watch it thinking, I just wish it looked a little bit better than it does, but I guess I can't really say much about that beyond that. There's just something about it that I don't like, but I don't know. Really great sound design, though. That is one thing I will give it. This show has amazing sound design, amazing fucking voice acting. Like, every single character has an amazing voice actor or voice actress. I don't even really know who voices who. I just remember just every single character having absolutely amazing performances. The woman who voiced Einhar, is that her name? She was phenomenal in this season. That would be my vote for best voice acting of the year, perhaps. But really, like, anybody in this series could win that award for their respective characters, their respective roles. That woman, every single character in this show wants to fuck that woman. That is the one thing I can take away from this. That is the one thing I joked about a lot. I did like a little watch thread on Twitter, and I just constantly joked, what no slave pussy does to a motherfucker. That really is the theme of this season. Everyone wants to fuck Einhar, or does, or in one way or another, and either does or doesn't, and that has massive consequences on the plot. She changes so many characters' lives. So that's the main thing. Vinland Saga Season 2. What's no slave pussy does to a motherfucker. Great series, though. I gave both of them 8 out of 10s, so that's cool. Anime of the years, basically. I said stuff.